Hello guys, welcome to my video, welcome to my channel. Today on this video, does your common rail engine does not start? Well, it cranks, but does not start. Today on this video, I'll try to explain you everything you need to know so you to see what the hell is the problem. Now, this engine is in perfect working condition, so I will disable some stuff here so we can see on diagnose with my very old Autel machine over there what are the signals that you may have to see to know what is the problem. I'm talking about crankshaft sensor, fuel pressure regulation, etc. So let's do it. So here on the diagnosis machine, first of all, like I said on other videos about this machine, I'm sorry, I'm not able to modify the language. Does not allow me at all to do that. So I will try to translate you what I have here for you to understand better. Now we have here information about the ECU, we have the fault codes, we have the clearance, the erasing of the fault codes, we have the live data. This is very important, the active tests in the configuration, okay? Some of the words may be easier to understand. Now, on this case, I don't want to know about the fault codes. I really don't want to know that. Reading fault codes is not doing a diagnosis, at least a complete one. Okay, what I want to do now is go to live data, and on my case, now, on live data, what you need to understand is you need a bunch of signals so the unit, so the car itself knows what to do to start the engine. We need a bunch of informations about RPM of the engine. Okay, this is pedal accelerator, this is the quantity of fuel, the correction of the cylinders, of the injectors, that does not matter. So I will select a bunch of parameters like the fuel pressure, the objective fuel pressure, and the actual present fuel pressure. Okay, this is the boost pressure, does not matter right now. We have the overboost, the intake, the MEF. This is a bit okay. For the multi-jet engines, you need this information on start. We will get to that further down the line, okay? This more things. This atmospheric pressure, you need to know that because if it is not right, you may have problems on boost, for example, or even on starting your car. So you have to have the present atmospheric pressure about 1000 millibar near the sea, okay, the sea level. The temperature of the air and so on. The battery tension, that is curious. We have to have a nice, good battery and starter for that. For the multi-jet engines, at least, you really need a good battery and a good starter. So we have more things here. We have the fuel pump relay. This information is the unit that sends a signal to close the fuel pump relay, so you have fuel pressure, okay? More things here down. You have here the synchronization of the engine. This synchronization is very important because you have a sensor, a crankshaft sensor, that reads the spin of the crankshaft, okay? And you have a second sensor that reads the position of the camshaft. So you have to have a synchronization between those two engine parts, obviously, okay? So you know that the car is on timing, at least near timing. This is the information that the control unit is coded with the transponder code, okay? And this one here is the information that the key that you are using is okay, is programmed. Now, I don't think I have any more things. Okay, now press OK. And now I will have only those pre-selected data. We have RPM, we have fuel pressure, we have mass airflow, we have authorization to activate the pump through the relay, and we have the authorization from the transponder key and from the control unit transponder. Now, before we get to the problems, I will start the engine so to see everything working correctly, so to have a baseline to understand what may be wrong with your engine. So I will try to start this very quickly because this Autel machine turns off when I do the starting of the engine, but I think everything is okay. So the starting of the engine, it is allowed because it read that my key fob is okay. But even if I have a good key fob, if my control unit is not programmed, for example, because even if I use another control unit from another car, even though my key is okay, my control unit may not be okay. We also can see that the synchronization of the engine is okay. The motor is synchronized, okay. Also, the relay of the fuel pump is on, so the car is on, and my airflow is really good, about 500 milligrams per stroke. The objective one, it is at least 280, okay, very nice. My fuel pressure, the objective is 270, and my real pressure is 270 as well. You may have here 280, 290, 300. It does not matter much for the idle, okay? Now I will go another page up. If you want to, please go. Okay, these early touch things are like this. And we have finally the RPM, okay? Normal RPM for this engine. Now let's go. I will provoke not some fault codes. Now I will provoke some problems and we will see which of these parameters is not good. Another thing, with everything still good, we can see only with the ignition on, something is happening here on the fuel pressure. How come you have 4 bar here on the fuel pressure with only the ignition on? So, as you may know, on some common rail engines, we do have a low pressure fuel pump. So, as you may know, on some common rail engines, we do have a fuel pump on the fuel tank, okay? So on that fuel pump, as soon as you turn on the ignition, we have about 4 bar of pressure. That pressure then, when you turn on the engine, must climb to at least 300 bars for starting the engine, okay? So this is a sign that you have not only we have signal to the pump, but the pump itself is good, is in working condition, okay? And also down here on the transponder part, we have the key that is allowed to start the engine, and the control unit is ready to start because it is programmed with also that same transponder. On the synchronization of the engine, it is telling me that it is waiting the starting of the engine to see if the engine it is indeed synchronized. So let's go do some mess around with the engine and see which of these parameters is off kilter. So start. Okay, this one, it is a bit difficult to catch on this diagnose machine because it is a bit slow. I will do it again, and also depends. Okay, can you see that? Can you hear that? Depends on the point where the car, the engine stops. This is not really the same thing that I was talking about. The engine still turns on, but it turns on very difficultly. Now again. In here, it should say the motor is synchronized, yes, but it is not through the sensor. On this case here, we have a problem on the upper control sensor of the camshaft, okay? But indeed, via the management of the ECU, it knows really that the engine is synchronized, even though you don't have the sensor okay, because that sensor only works to start the engine the smoother as possible. Again. Okay. Can you hear the injections? The spikes on the injection, that is on purpose, so the ECU knows where the pistons are, and in that way know how to do the injection. In this case, the multi-injection. Very fancy. Now we know that this problem is here on the synchronization of the engine. We can have a problem on the sensor itself, on the wiring, and on the ECU itself. About each and every one of these problems, as you can imagine, I will not deal with them all the way through, because the video will be like an hour long, and I really don't want that. So I'll do the general stuff, like engine starting 101. So as we go along on the videos, I will try to explain you step by step on each and every one of these parameters, so you can diagnose very specifically and very thoroughly every one of these symptoms, okay? So in here we have the ignition on, everything seems okay. Let's try to start the engine. What is wrong with this picture? Can you see? What is wrong with it? Fuel pressure. The objective one, 300 millibars, 300 bars. In the actual pressure, it is at 650 now, okay, correctly, 430 bars. What this tells you is that the low pressure fuel pump is okay, because it's constantly maintaining that 4 bar minimum of pressure. But when you want to start the car, it does not reach the desired 300 bars, not even close. So we have a problem with the high pressure fuel pump, not the pump itself. Maybe can be the pump, okay? Can be the pump, can be the regulator, can be a sensor, can be a leak somewhere, and that's about it, okay? Also, you can always have a problem, for each and every one of these parameters, we can have a problem on the ECU, okay? So I will not repeat that time after time. So ECU on all of this, wiring loom on all of this, and then you can have sensors, actuators, leaks. For example, we can have a faulty injector on this problem here, but then you have the very smoky start, because if you don't have accumulation of pressure on the high pressure, having a leak on the injector, you will be injecting fuel directly in top of the piston, and you have a lot of white or gray smoke through the exhaust, okay? So next problem. So this one is very good. You don't have communication with the diagnosis machine. The car does not start. And also, the pictogram for the engine does not turn on. The engine light does not turn on. Well, the problem with that is maybe a lot of things, okay? Normally it has to do with the feeding of the control unit. Maybe some positive or negative or something else that you may have on your control unit that is not working correctly. Maybe sometimes you can do a jump start on your battery, and this happens, okay? So if you don't have communication with your control unit, you have to make sure you have all the negatives and positives going through your ECU, and only then you can have sure that the problem it is on the inside of the ECU, on the wiring or whatever. For that, I will do a video specifically for that, like I told you. When you don't have communication with your ECU or any other control unit on your car, what should you do? So another problem related to this earlier one, you switch on your ignition, your engine light does not turn on, but your immobilizer is always on. Now, this is very easy to fall into a trap, because at this stage you want to do a diagnosis on your immobilizer, right? And we'll tell you a lot of fault codes about the ignition is not the key is not programmed, and so many things, and the problem is really not on there, okay? And then you try to erase the immobilizer or delete it in some way, and the problem persists. Because if your ECU is activated by transponder, if you don't have a communication between your ECU and your immobilizer unit, of course you will have a lot of fault codes inside of your immobilizer unit, okay? So I will not advise you at all to pursue that route, okay? If you do a full diagnosis on all of the control units of your car and one of them does not communicate, of course that all of the neighbor units will complain about that. That unit is not communicating. So it will launch a lot of fault codes, false fault codes about that. Ignore that and try to solve why that unit does not communicate. As soon as you can reestablish communication with ECU, all those other units will comply and will work out beautifully. Now, this next one, I discovered by accident working on collision cars. It does not work on every single car. It does not work on every single multi-jet engine either. But it is quite interesting. So you are going down the road, you hit a bank, and you lose power. You switch off and on your engine, and now it does not start. Which of the parameters is wrong? Can you see that? Look at that. Measured air mass, the math. Nothing, okay? There is something, but I cannot do it really well. But imagine it is really close to zero. Okay, what happens is, for some, namely the 1.3, the Iveco engines, for example, they really need the airflow in order to start the car, in order to stay at idle even, okay? So if you burst an intercooler pipe and then your car does not work, that is only because of your intercooler pipe, okay? So check that out and then just connect your pipe and the car will start, okay? So next problem. Now, I guess I saved the best for last. Let's do here the cranking. It will not start. We'll crank. My battery is starting to get low. Okay, what do you see? Everything is okay. So what the hell is going on? So again, watch the RPM and the synchro. Synchronization, RPM, and fuel pressure. Okay, crank. Okay. So we have fuel pressure, but it takes a long time to develop. Again. My starter is getting tired. It actually starts to develop a lot more fuel pressure because of the time that we are cranking. So on the RPM, we have 0, but after sometimes it starts to do some magic over there. Yes, magic. And over here, we have on the synchronization, no synchronization. So this one is very hard to detect. My starter is really okay. Engine synchronized. So what happens here is something really interesting. The RPM sensor is bad, okay? After we do some engine rotations, the management of the ECU starts to try to manage something to try to start the car. So it starts to develop fuel pressure, and through the cam sensor, yes, starts to read RPM. Not in the perfect way, as it is to be expected, but nonetheless it starts to create something resembling an RPM signal, okay? So if your RPM sensor is starting to degrade, it can actually do some magic and starts to coincide both signals to create an RPM sensor. So on this case here, you'll be amazed to learn that okay, I have RPM. It starts to develop very lately, but I have. No, you don't. This RPM signal here is fake, okay? Don't forget that this information is filtered for you, okay? For the reader, for the technician. So this RPM signal here is not real from the sensor itself. If you have a oscilloscope, you will understand that RPM sensor, it is not real, okay? About the oscilloscope, the graphics, we can leave that for another future video, very far away video, because it is really expensive. And also I'm trying to guide you step by step so we can learn all together how to do stuff. And the oscilloscope is something very far in the future for all of us. I can work with it, I work with it every day, but for you I think it is a bit soon. Okay, so we have the synchronization on. Well, not really on, because it cannot see where the RPM on the crankshaft is, but it tries to. Okay, it tries to between micro injections on the system and the position of the camshaft, it tries to develop some RPMs. So if you have an RPM reading that is too slow, check that out. The sensor, the target for the sensor, yes, the target, the mechanical target inside of the crankshaft, sometimes is loose. Yes, loose. On the multi-jet engine, at least. On some engines, like the PSA engines, the target is magnetic, and that goes to hell as well. So if you have a late RPM counting, may not be just your diagnosed machine that is slow. Maybe the problem it is really on the RPM. If you insist too much, probably you will start to have false readings all across the board, and that is how we get stuck on diagnosis. So we have seen here the engine RPM, okay? We have seen here the fuel pressure, the high and the low fuel pressure. We have seen the mass airflow. For this one, I want to show you on a different video how to see if your mass airflow is working correctly. Not only on the bench with the multimeter, that is not completely, it is true, okay, but it is not complete at all. We have to see on the road how it behaves with the acceleration of the engine. I'll try to do a video for that as soon as possible. Trust me, I'm trying to do everything at once. It's not really being easy. We also have saw that the fuel pump relay is working correctly because of the authorization of the transponder systems. About the transponder systems, I will leave it up here so you to see, and also down below. And we also talk about the camshaft position sensor. This is a very interesting one. The function of this sensor is varied, as you may saw at this point. So for each and every one of these parameters, I will do a separate video for that, specific to how to find the problem, how to diagnose everything, okay? For the transponder system, the key and the control unit, I already did it, again, up here and down below. And for the rest of them, bear with me, I'm trying to do as the best as I can with the time that I have, so to have the maximum information possible. I hope with this video you can relate to this and you can solve any potential problems that you have on your car. At least try to narrow down where the problem may be if the car does not start. Remember that not every common rail system has a low pressure fuel pump. Most of them don't have it, but those that do have it, do not put one-way valves on the system, because it does not work. If you have 4.3 bars on the system, if you have a leak, you will see it, okay, very easily. Anti-return valves, one-way valves will not do anything for your low pressure system, okay? On the systems that don't have anything, just suction to the high pressure fuel pump, yes, on that case, obviously, a one-way valve can solve a lot of issues, okay? So guys, here you have it. Now my engine is all torn apart because I have a noise, as you may saw it on the video about the accessories belt. I have a noise on my AC compressor. It's not fun to do AC stuff on the winter. In Portugal, yes, it is really hot on the summer, but on the winter, oh man, beware. It is really cold as well and windy. So I'm really glad you are able to share this with your friends. I've seen so many people come to me because you have shared this content with them. I'm very grateful for that. Really, I really am grateful for that. So on this case here, I'm trying to solve the problem, confirm that the problem it is indeed on the pulley of the compressor. It is really loose and I'm afraid to damage something and then everything goes to my timing belt. Not funny at all. Thank you so much for watching this. I'm really glad of this path so far. Down on the description I have a lot of information that can be useful for you about this system, about the many other systems of these cars. many things that can and will be useful for you. Also, down below, if you want to, is not mandatory, there are some helps that you can relate to for helps for the channel. I see you on the next one, guys. Bye.